All right, so I'm here with
Mike Hodnick.
All right, and you're doing a talk tomorrow morning on.
It's level up your Win 7 Kinect apps.
Okay, and last time you did a talk here, you also did a Kinect-based talk, but that was before the official Microsoft SDK came out.
Yep.
So, what would you say is the difference between what you had before and what you have now with that SDK?
The main thing that the new SDK gives you is it's more of a familiar Microsoft API, what you would expect from a Microsoft API. So there's a lot of cohesion and consistency with all the things you need to do. It's also link friendly, so you can use a link query to get skeleton information rather than some of the other kind of workaround type methods you had to use and maybe some of the other community libraries that were out before.
Okay. So with developing something for a Kinect and how you do input, we were talking over lunch, and you were saying if you try to do something where it's just I move my hand and then I push, or I try to do stuff that's more of a traditional Windows interface, that you're cheating or you're not doing things that are more natural with using Kinect. So what are some things that you would say are more natural when you're using a Kinect input?
Yeah, I mean, you really have your whole body, whether it's gestures or just movement, and you have all the 3D space around you and creative, you've got math and algebra available to you to use all those things to control an application. So as you mentioned, like cursor control, I think that's kind of a cop-out in a lot of ways. You're taking a new technology, motion tracking, natural user interface technology, and applying it to an old way of controlling an app using a mouse. It's an easy way to kind of get introduced to Kinect programming to control an app, but it may not necessarily be the best way for somebody to control that application. Especially different sized people, large people, small people, all have really different experiences with trying to do cursor control. Yeah. At least that's been my experience.
I know my kids, when they try to play some Kinect games, Ryan's almost 5 and Hayden's 6. Ryan, especially a year ago, it really didn't pick him up well at all.
Right.
Those with really short kids, and then they get frustrated because they're like, "This is so cool, Dad's running the sports game, and I can't do that."
Right.
Then again, when they box, they don't really try to box. They just sit there like this the whole time and they win. So that too, you now have that direction as well. So when you think of a lot of apps as traditionally 2D, you got the flat window and that's it. Whereas with Kinect, you do have that extra dimension, that third dimension where you can go in the Z. So how do you see people, like what kind of gestures would you be able to do? And you can just think of a button push, but what else? I mean, how can you incorporate that into controlling an application?
Yeah, one thing that I've done is utilize that Z direction to be kind of a barrier to know when you want somebody to control the application. So for example, there's an application I worked on with WPF 3D where we wanted somebody to use their hands to be able to rotate a 3D model around or zoom in and zoom out. But when that person just walks up to the application, if their hands are down at their sides, you don't want the app to start tracking their hands to move it around. Mm-hmm. So using that Z distance between the person's torso and the camera, as soon as their hand is out a certain distance from their torso, then we permit control. Okay. So that's one way that we use that.
This is something you put on your blog, right? Was this the whole bounding box type of idea?
No, it wasn't the bounding box,
okay.
But there is I do have a blog post on how the 3D control works though. So,
okay. So to wrap it up, when you've got all these new input devices that are out there, the touch screens with tablets and iPads, and obviously with Windows 8 moving to a much more Metro style with be able to do touch and gesture, and then you also have the Kinect input where you're able to do a lot of things just with not even touching anything, you're just touching the air, and you can still have that all picked up. How would you see taking an application like Office or even Visual Studio or these very traditional keyboard, mouse type of things and moving them into a world like that and getting advantages in using those types of inputs?
Sure. I guess with things like programming specifically, I don't see a keyboard ever going away because it's a very personal, intimate experience between a developer and their keyboard. I don't.
That just sounded dirty.
Let me rephrase that. But thinking of other things like Office or those power user type apps, I think the mileage can vary depending on what type of natural user interface technology we're talking about. One thing we haven't mentioned is speech. I think speech really could play a part in maybe Visual Studio or maybe Word. Well, Word, you could actually dictate to your computer. It could fill out a document as you speak. That's technology that exists, really today.
Well, but to be devil's advocate here, I mean, a lot of speech recognition throughout history has always been crappy at best. I mean, where it's not just, damn you autocorrect websites where they change, the phone when you're typing, but it just doesn't get the semantics and what the context of your conversation. But then you can also flip it around and say, well, speaking of context of human scenarios, IBM Watson, I mean, it just crushed everybody that played Jeopardy, and that takes a lot of context and a rapid amount to figure out what it's trying to get at.
Right.
So that actually leads to another thing, though. I'll kind of dive into another thing where they showed on the iPhone 4S, where it was kind of like, give me directions to this, and it was actually that good where it would do exactly what you said. And part of me goes, really, is that true, or is that just a bunch of smoke and mirrors? But then there's this part of me goes, maybe it is that good. I mean, do you think something like that, when we have speech recognition to that point now where it's that good?
Right. Yeah, as the iPhone, the Siri technology, based on the videos that they have out there, it looks ridiculously conversational, where it just recognizes you and understands you. I don't know enough to know what's really going on behind the scenes, or how much that video and that demo were kind of canned to make it look and come across like it could do all those things in any context. But no, I think you're right. I think these natural user interface technologies that are out do have a time and place that they are most effective, but across the board, or even for any one specific technology, I don't think any one's just going to be the way that everything is done. I don't believe that. The mouse and keyboard will have relevance for a long time. The command line still has relevance. Even before the mouse came out, we used command line. We still use command line today, at least as developers, or it still has relevance, and always will. But I don't think motion or touch or speech will be the way for everything.
Okay.
They'll all have times and places where they do make sense, and depends on the application and the place.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.